live even when I'm just
some Cain. You gotta raise some Cain. In the heartland where the faith runs strong, we've seen the shadows growing long. Watch those around us be deceived. Yeah, the fight is at our doors, no matter who we believe. Corruption, lawless day and night, we'll speak the truth into the light. We'll bring the battle, heed the call, watch the whole thing fall. We gotta raise some Cain, show the lies, break some chains and make things right. Feel the power, be the change. Time is now. We gotta raise some Cain.
Good evening, Patriots. Welcome back to the Raising Cain Show. And tonight is going to be another night of exposing the truth and talking about the things that have been going on in our country for quite some time. It seems like we're on a theme lately, and tonight is going to be another night of uncovering those types of things which have been affecting our country for quite some time. We've got a great guest on tonight, and I am looking forward to introducing him. Dennison Joyce, a retired U.S. history teacher and who spent 30 years teaching in some of New York City's toughest schools. We're going to get into talking about these things. And but before we do, as you know, I like to run my commercials first and get them out of the way so we have no interruptions during our talk. So I'm going to do that now. So stick with us. We'll be right back after a short commercial break.
It says, I woke up this morning and looked out the door to a country I don't recognize. They put masks on our face to hide our pain, and there's no fire in most people's eyes. And it's still true today. It's still true today that they've tried to destroy the American spirit. And in some instances, they've done a dadgum good job. But in other instances, they have lit an inferno in some people. And we right now are gathering some of those people that are on freaking fire to save this country.
Increasing expenses have caused us all a lot of pressure these days, and it's affecting even the wealthiest of people. Most have lost their sense of security, stability, and even hope for a strong financial future. The game plan of everyone in your cell phone has likely been disrupted or even hardcore stopped, and most are looking for a creative solution to regain financial momentum. Oftentimes, life's best solutions are the simplest. But first, a question. What is something most people think they should own but don't? Crypto, fine art, real estate? Nope. We are talking about real money. The kind kings and queens fought for in large institutions today buy in mass. We're talking about gold and silver, assets that provide confidence in tough financial situations. So the question is, do you own any? If you don't, you're not alone. Most people aren't maximizing the power of precious metals because it's just been too complicated. And even though they see advertisements about gold and silver daily, they don't really know who to trust. That is, until now. The bottom line is that buying gold and silver doesn't have to be complicated or scary. There's a simple, better way to accumulate assets and create financial peace, headache-free. And this very minute, a new community of average people are seeing above average results to the tune of tens of millions in assets over the last few years. This system is tested, it's simple, and it's not an experiment. To date, it's helped more than 80,000 people bring hope back into their lives. It's invitation only. And right now, this new community has accepted a challenge to give away as much free gold this year as possible. Curious? Learn how to get your free gold today. Check out the next step to get the details.
Since 2017, 150,000 farms have shut down. Working farmland has been reduced by 21 million acres. The system has been crippling the remaining farmers, forcing some to adopt nefarious farming techniques, by pumping hormones and other performance-enhancing drugs into their cows so they can survive in crammed feedlots. Or the farmers are forced to jump ship and sell to land-hoarding, profit-chasing agricultural oligarchies, who use their billions of dollars to crush the competition and increase your family's dependence on their manufactured food. What could possibly go wrong? The family farm will soon be a thing of the past, unless you do something. You can. That's why there's From the Farm, an industry-disrupting platform that connects consumers directly with local farmers, which means you can buy fresh, non-factory farm food, and you'll know exactly where your food came from and how it was raised. For the first time in nearly 100 years, independent farms will have a way to not only survive, but thrive. From the Farm was founded by A.J. Richards, an active homesteader, and Brooke Entz, a CrossFit Games athlete and an Amazonian warrior in the movies Wonder Woman and Justice League. She clearly has a passion for healthy food and a healthy lifestyle. And since both AJ and Brooke come from generations of ranchers and farmers, they know what they're talking about. We can't do this alone. We need the strength of the American people behind us. Help us build a new food system that combines the wisdom of the past with the technology of the future. Investing in From the Farm isn't just a financial decision. It's an investment into our future, our small family farms, and our food sovereignty. Invest today.
Welcome back to the Raising Cain Show, where we dig into the stories that the mainstream media won't touch and where truth is not just a slogan, but a mission. Today's guest is someone who spent his entire life questioning authority and empowering others to do the same. Dennison Joyce, a retired U.S. history teacher, spent 30 years teaching in some of New York City's toughest schools. He's a mental health consultant, a radio host, and a volunteer firefighter in the Catskills. But more important than that, Dennison is a serious researcher into government overreach, the JFK, MLK, and RFK assassinations, the truth behind 9/11, the lies around COVID-19, and the fear-driven climate change narrative. He's the host of Through the Looking Glass on WIOX radio, and today he's here to take us through the smoke and mirrors of modern history. Buckle up, the rabbit hole goes deep, and we're going to get into it. Dennison, thank you so much for joining the show tonight.
Nate, not only a pleasure, but an honor. Really appreciate it.
So you've been just digging into so many different things that have happened throughout history. And, you know, it's funny. I've got a brother who's a history teacher, and, you know, and so, and I don't know what it is, but it seems like I have a lot of friends who have also been history teachers as well. And that's something that, you know, I think I'm guessing it's because I love to talk about history and I love learning new things about, you know, because history repeats itself. And it's funny, we just did a show on Thursday night, and I had a friend of mine, retired Master Sergeant Jack Donna, and we went through and I pulled up a whole bunch of stuff that were, you know, historical things that occurred that, you know, have been, you know, basically came out, a lot of it through the church committee and, you know, the MK Ultra, you know, program and a sub program. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but it had to do with, you know, basically the same kind of stuff we see with this whole, you know, Epstein thing. And so, you know, history repeats itself. There's nothing new under the sun, I think, as Solomon said in the book of Ecclesiastes. And, but it's good to know history. So how did your classroom experience shape your views on how history is taught, and what's left out?
That's a great question. You know, it started when I was 16 in 1975. Kenneth O'Donnell was my history teacher. And he didn't give a lot of homework, so we liked him. And he told jokes, we liked him. But what I loved about him was he contrasted mainstream points of view, what the history book told us, with some of the facts that were left out of the history books. And he wanted us to look at why certain things were edited out. What's the filter here? What are we not allowed to see? And and he focused on the JFK assassination. And at that time, 1975, Geraldo Rivera decided to show on national TV, Good Night America was his show, the very first time the Zapruder film, the 22-second home camera footage of the JFK assassination. And all the other cameras were taken instantly, as they were in the RFK and Martin Luther King assassinations. But Zapruder was an amateur filmmaker, and he had made a copy of that instantly. And sure enough, the FBI came to his door. Kennedy was shot around noon in Dallas. FBI came at his door at 6 and seized the film. They didn't realize he had a copy. Any case, that copy made it to college campuses. A lawyer for Oswald named Mark Lane was going around lecturing, trying to wake people up to this conspiracy. And I wasn't aware of that at that age at all. But in my high school, age 16, Kenneth O'Donnell, my teacher, basically, after reading the history textbook showing JFK was shot from the back and his head thrusted forwards, and we see the film and it's the complete reverse. The governor gets hit. It doesn't seem like he gets hit simultaneously. So the number of bullets vary. And I realized at a very young age, I was super patriotic. I used to march in the 4th of July parade. We had a flag outside our house every day. My father was a World War II fighter pilot. I'm very proud of his service, although very affected by it. And so I grew up red, white, and blue, loved America. And this hit me like a lightning bolt, like our beloved president. And I was from Massachusetts. Originally, I was born outside of Boston. So the Kennedys were kind of sacred cows.
Yeah.
I think JFK was unique in that, Eisenhower, the president before him for 8 years, lifetime military man, knew how crucial it was not to send men to die unless it was absolutely necessary. Yeah. And he told Kennedy in a brief meeting, these guys want war, and they want war for money.
Yeah.
And I signed up as a patriot, defend this country against all foes, but not to start wars for rich capitalists or businessmen or corporations, to make the portfolio fat. And he announced that in his farewell address. The military-industrial complex is the greatest threat to American liberties that we have today. Yep. And so I think Kennedy kind of started to figure this out and wanted to shut down the CIA. He said, I'll crush it to 1,000 pieces and scatter it to the winds. He felt they betrayed them at the Bay of Pigs. They told him, listen, we got a plan. We're going to go through with it, but you won the election, so not Nixon. So here it is. We're going into Cuba with 1,500 Cuban exiles. No Americans. We're just helping them retake their country. They're patriots for Cuba. And Kennedy said, that's fine, but no Americans. I'm not starting a war with Cuba. And at the 11th hour, when the mission was clearly failing because Castro's army easily overwhelmed them, Kennedy called the CIA and couldn't reach the top 3 heads. They all supported him. He ended up firing them, Allen Dulles being the chief at the time. And Kennedy said, you son of a bitches, you betrayed me. You set me up for this. Yep. And he did not send troops. He was told there was an aircraft carrier off the coast and 10,000 Marines could be on board in a short period of time. And he just felt so betrayed. He goes, you guys tried to sucker me into this. And then, the next day at a press conference, he says, victory has 1,000 fathers and defeat is an orphan. And he kind of took responsibility for it, but he never forgot who these people were. And he ended up, again, firing them. And I think he saw this sort of deep state. He saw this little cabal. And they took him out, I believe, on November 22nd, 1963.
100%.
And I think that was a coup d'etat for this nation. And I don't think we've been the same since.
I would agree with you. In fact, I have interviewed some very credible witnesses and people who claim to have been involved in that. And I think I've found nothing to lead me to believe that what I've been told is the anything other than the absolute truth, and that is that the CIA, through their connections with mobsters, had Kennedy assassinated. And in fact, there was a really interesting letter that was basically, it was like extemporaneous notes that were kept by the deputy director of the CIA, that basically laid out the entire plan. And it was all about, they wanted to go to war.
Mm-hmm.
And it involved the deputy director of the CIA, the FBI director, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and to a certain degree, even LBJ, because he knew about it.
Yeah.
And they planned on, killing him off so that they could go to war. They wanted to go to war with Russia, but LBJ, said no. And but he agreed that he was okay with Indochina.
Mm-hmm.
So the Vietnam War was, in fact, basically appeasing the military-industrial complex. And we've seen this played out in our country over and over again. There are things that, I've been a very patriotic person pretty much my whole life. I got a long family history in the military as well, and I grew up, having those values instilled in me, and so I was always very skeptical of these. I don't even like using the term conspiracy theory, because the truth is, a lot of them are conspiracy facts.
Yeah.
But I
spoiler alerts.
Yes. And when I look at, for example, things like 9/11, if you'd asked me 10 years ago, do you believe that 9/11 was an inside job? I'd have said, no way. No, I can't, because in my mind, I couldn't conceive people in our own government, not just being involved in allowing something like that to happen, or planning something like that to happen, but even allowing something like that to happen, it just was inconceivable to me. But a decade later, after seeing what I've seen, both as a federal whistleblower, in 2018, but also just the mounds and mounds of evidence that have been, disclosed over the last 5 years. It's just unbelievable, the things that our government has done. And I don't want to say that I'm a cynic entirely, but I am a cynic when it comes to the government telling us anything that is truthful.
Yeah.
Whatever they tell us, I expect to find out the truth 50 years later. And I've just kind of come to accept that. So I don't take anything that they tell me without a grain of salt, just like I don't take anything the media tells us. I remember the first time anybody ever mentioned to me Operation Mockingbird.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, nah, you got to be kidding me. And then I want to say, what was the name of the organization? I can't remember. But there was an organization that actually had the audio files of famous people in the media meeting with the CIA and talking about this operation to basically allow the government to tell. And this was like years ago. I heard these tapes. Then when the Twitter files got released, that was, like, to me, just eye-opening to know how deep they were in shaping the narrative, the intelligence community. And I think also me being read on, I was before I worked for the FBI, I was working for Marforce Cyber, and on part of a cyber protection team, and our job was going after hackers hacking our national critical infrastructure. And the team that I was on was what they called a DCI hunt team. We went after those hackers. We were also part of the national mission. And because of that, we were detached to NSA. So I was read on to FISA and intelligence authorities and, our spy satellites and all kinds of surveillance systems. And I mean, highly, highly classified programs. And when I saw how intrusive everything is, and I remember at that time thinking, oh my gosh, this is dangerous. Now they assured me oh, this will never be used against the American people. And in fact, they made us sign, these documents that basically said it, we understand that if we ever use this on Americans, that we will, be arrested and, get prison sentences for, 10 years for each offense of violating, American citizens' rights. Lo and behold, we have January 6th, and a judge releases information about a year later, or actually a couple of years later, saying that there were 258,000 illegal uses of Section 702 of FISA to spy on American citizens, mostly related to January 6th, and also some related to, to some of the marches, the George Floyd protests. So this should be something that unites the American people, that we don't want the government spying on us.
Absolutely.
We don't want the government violating our rights. But we were talking before we began the show a little bit about this, and the topic came up that they want to divide us. They want to keep us at each other's throats and dividing us, because as long as we're divided, we can't stand against tyranny.
I completely agree, and I'm stunned at how effective they've been. I was a Democrat for many years. My brother, one of them, was a Republican, and we would go at it, but it was good fun.
Yeah.
I didn't think he was a horrible person. I didn't think I can't have anything to do with him. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, you believe that? Well, I believe this. Okay, and you gleaned a little from the other side.
That's right. That's right.
And we both wanted the same thing. We wanted a great country that served the people, that helped people, prosper. But we thought we had different strategies towards doing so. And today they've just weaponized it in such a degree and so effectively that, when Biden comes out and says the greatest problem in America today is white supremacy, I'm like,
right?
What does that exist?
Yeah. And by the way, it wasn't just Biden. The FBI director, Wray, pushed that propaganda in front of Congress. And I was at the FBI at the time, and I'm going, are you kidding me? I'm like, I'm looking. I get these reports every Friday that tell me what's going on around the world. And at that time, they had reports coming out every Friday. And you know what was number one on the list in terms of terrorist threats in America? It was Antifa. But they didn't want to call it Antifa. It was basically, they had threats of groups like, what's it called? Redneck Rebellion, which is like basically a far left Marxist anti-American group that wants to, overthrow and create a socialist state. They actually had unbelievable intel, but that's not the narrative that was being pushed to the American people.
No, and as you say with Antifa, I mean, when they tell you something, the opposite's probably true. Well, Antifa is short for anti-fascist.
Right.
I was at a anti-vaccine demonstration, and Antifa is harassing us.
Right.
This is a mandate from the state. You must get the shot. You have to get the shot.
Right.
This is violating the Nuremberg codes. This is violating our constitutional rights.
Yeah. It's exactly the kind of things that fascists do.
Exactly. They're the brown shirts.
That's right. That's right.
And BLM to a degree as well. That's an AstroTurf organization funded by the billionaires. And, I worked in the ghetto, and they didn't do a thing for the kids' families that I've worked with.
Yeah.
They didn't do a damn thing. They just created a lot of hostility and anger and division. Yeah. And again, who wins when we're divided? It's the same old story.
That's a very good point. Follow the money. Who's funding these people? Who's funding it? Where is it coming from? And that's where you'll find your answer. And now, I see the same thing happening, and it's not just on the left too; it's on the right too. You see all kinds of when you start digging into funding and you start seeing divisions and all of that happening. In the end, you find out that it's our adversaries that are basically doing a lot of the funding of a lot of this stuff, because they know as long as we're fighting each other, we can't see what the real threat is.
Absolutely, and it's terrifying because the income tax, and I'm not against anyone working hard, making good living at all, but when the richest 3 people in the world own more wealth than the bottom 50% of the globe's population, then you have to say, okay, we've got oligarchs, we've got kings once more. They're not called that, but essentially there's a small elite group that has tremendous power, and And I believe that their agenda is to reduce the population.
Oh,
And
they've said it.
yeah,
I mean, they don't hide it. They don't
Yeah.
hide it at all. You got these yahoos, over there in Davos that basically say they call us, useless eaters,
Oh my goodness.
and they have no shame about it whatsoever. These are, they are basically the epitome, of Mengele and in the Nazi Party. It's like it's like a revival of it, and they've twisted everything to make it look like they're the benevolent ones.
That's it.
It's disgusting.
Well, Albert Camus said it best. He said, the alibi of tyrants is always the welfare of the citizens. We're doing this to hold you down for your own good.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. This hurts me more than it hurts you.
Right. Well, they have their yachts and their private jets. And they're saying, stop climate change. Give up.
Oh
your
my
cars.
gosh, yes. And they're spraying, crap in our air, and God knows what it's doing to us or what it's doing to the weather. I mean, I got to be honest with you. You look at the stuff going on in Texas, and it's like, and you had the same thing, just not even a year ago, in South Carolina, Florida.
Yep.
I mean, look, we've seen storms and stuff like that, but it's interesting because they've said for many, many years, that climate change, and they've said climate change doesn't have an impact on any weather phenomenon, but it'll kill us in the end. But now they're saying, oh, look, climate change is the cause of all this. It's all man-made. Yeah, it is man-made.
Mm-hmm.
It's not what they're claiming. It's causing it.
No. It's the biggest con
unbelievable.
going today is this, the Earth's going to heat up and the younger people are not going to have any kind of future. It is crap. And they're also dividing us, left, right. They're dividing us by race. They're dividing us by nationality. They're dividing us by religion. They're dividing us also, I think even more so, by generations and turning the youth. And that's what the Bolsheviks did. That's what the Nazis did essentially, is get the young ones and turn them, and you can see the Greta Thunbergs and these kids.
Oh my gosh!
They don't have any depth in their arguments, but it's a religion. They just have the faith that this is happening. And you're right; they create these massive storms or these horrible floods or these fires that we've not seen before.
Yep.
And they say, "Oh, see, it's climate change. Like the Earth's temperature's gone up 1.5 degrees in a century."
Diseases, outbreaks. Look, COVID designed in a lab. I mean, do we really, honestly, at this point, do we really think when they were preparing, they were doing exercises with the World Health Organization a year before the outbreak, and the exercise, basically was exercising the outbreak of a COVID-like virus, of course, heavily funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, who Bill Gates himself in a TED Talk said that we need to reduce the population of the earth. And he said, interestingly enough, and we're doing a pretty good job with, birth control and vaccines.
He said we should be able to get rid of 10 or 15% easy.
That's right. And it turns out that the mRNA vaccine, this is not, Nate Cain saying, this is research studies that are double-blind, peer-reviewed research studies that show that the spike protein has an affinity for female ovaries more than anything else.
Yeah.
Like it collects there more than anywhere else. You can't tell me that's not by design.
No, it's terrifying. It's really terrifying. We don't know what's been put in.
No,
many of us.
We don't understand. Like they don't even have an idea. I mean, they have suspicion, but they don't know why the fertility rate is dropping off the edge. All around the world. I think South Korea's got like the worst of it, but it's pretty bad here in the US. It's certainly bad in Europe. And, but yet they're going to move all these, illegal alien migrants into our country across our border. And it's just like, people they're bringing people here that are immediately going into the welfare state as soon as they get here, becoming dependent upon the government. And of course, bringing with them diseases because they're not checking them across the border. They're bringing things like, we've had outbreaks of tuberculosis now, and it's like something that we thought was done, and they're seeing other weird Chagas disease, which causes inflammation of the heart, which is from the kissing bug, and that's made its way into America and it never was here before.
Oh my God. And the insidious thing is as well is I lost my job. My wife lost her job because we wouldn't take that shot.
Yeah.
A lot of people moved to a different state. I mean, everyone's life was whole affected when the migrants came across, illegal aliens came across the border. There was no talk whatsoever of a vaccine.
No, we'll put you up in a hotel. We'll kick out the veterans. We'll put you into a luxury hotel. We'll provide for you and give you your cultural food. Meanwhile, we're going to kick these people out of the hospitals who worked through COVID.
Yeah.
Before there were any vaccines, and they were basically put themselves at risk in catching COVID to save lives. And they're, now they're kicking them to the curb. It is insane what we have seen happen in this country in the last, 5 years. It's just unbelievable.
It is. And I'm part of a group called Teachers for Choice. It was started by a teacher named Michael Cain, and basically we were fighting against initially being tested because the testing was our DNA was going to a Chinese company.
Oh, wonderful.
And the border, it wasn't being restricted. So now what? So we fought that, we won. And then the next thing was the mandates, and we fought that, and we didn't win that one. They dismissed all religious exemptions except maybe a handful, but none of them were for people who were really against the whole nature of the shot. And there's over 240 teachers now trying to get back pay, and they haven't been able to. They won a lawsuit, but Mayor Adams said, nope, we're not going to pay them. So they're in limbo now.
Yeah, I think this is a Supreme Court argument, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I think they violated the rights of every American when they mandated these shots because, you think about it, right? And I think it's a Fourth Amendment violation. I'll tell you why I say that, because what is the Fourth Amendment about? You shall be secure, in all of your papers, effects, and all of that against, unreasonable search and seizure. Well, what is that all about? It's about intrusiveness of the government into so we're saying the government doesn't have the right to search my body. Well, how in the hell do you go from that to allowing the government to have the right to stick something in my blood?
Absolutely.
It's me. It's like, if you don't have the right to even search me, how the hell do you have the right to stick a needle in me?
And they hung 11 Nazis, right? Because just as the Nuremberg Code, they called it,
right.
You guys violated the bodily integrity of people. You did not give them informed consent. We didn't get informed consent. People pulled up in a parking lot and got the shot. Nobody said what was in this.
They shut down churches.
Oh.
How in the world do you violate the First Amendment and get away with that? They shut down churches. There was I can't remember where it was, but there was a church in one of the U.S. states that the church was trying to comply with the law. And so what they did was they said, look, we're going to have it set up so that you can drive and sit in the church parking lot and you can listen on your radio, and we'll broadcast it, basically shortwave radio, to your car. And then that way we can at least fellowship, but we're all separated in our vehicles. The cops went and wrote tickets to the people in the church parking lot. It's like, are you kidding me?
I know.
It was insane. And to me, this is what really, like, when I talk about, like, it's no wonder I'm kind of jaded at this point. When I look at that, and I look at how there has been not one arrest of anybody who violated the rights of U.S. citizens, not one. You had the Secretary of Defense under Biden who violated the law and actually forced the soldiers to get vaccinated with a vaccine that was not even under it was an experimental vaccine. It was not the one that was authorized under the emergency use authorization. It was a batch that was not authorized, and he forced it on people. And by the way, even if it was the one that was accepted under the emergency use authorization, the law was clear. The only person that could sign off on that is the president himself. And he never did. That was a decision by the Secretary of Defense. That man should be in prison. And in fact, I would say, if anybody died from it, he should be in prison for, at a minimum, manslaughter. So, and when you look at and I don't blame just the presidents either, because at the end of the day, Congress has the power of the purse, and they are deciding for whatever reason not to use it. Look, they could shut all this crap down. They could shut down FISA and Section 702 and all of the illegal abuse of it. Yet the Republican Congress kicked it down, the can down the road.
They have the power of the purse, as you say, but the oligarchs and billionaires have
they got
the real power of the purse. They have the purse power. You know what I'm saying? And so Congress
let's talk about that for a minute.
Yeah.
So I ran for Congress this last Republican primary. And I will tell you what I discovered in that process. And I ran because I felt the Lord tell me to run. And to a certain degree, I'm glad that I didn't win because, politics is so dirty. But I learned so much in going through that experience. And one of the things that I learned is how dark money works. And most people have no idea. A company, and this is all due to Citizens United, U.S. versus Citizens United, where they basically determined that a corporation has all the rights of a U.S. citizen. And so what they did was they basically gave a corporation power to be able to spend money on advertising, for candidates, as long as they quote unquote, aren't coordinating with the campaign, and which I'm sure they are, but how do you prove that?
Right.
So here's the thing. You have people who are running, and an LLC, can run advertising, and there's no limit. And because it falls under the IRS, there's no public disclosure of anything and where that money comes from. So that money could have come from China, could have come from Iran, could have come from, any country in the world. It doesn't even have to come, it could have come from criminals. And at the end of the day, because it's a corporation spending their own money on advertising, there's nothing that we can do. It's called dark money, and it's perfectly legal, and it is not covered under the FEC.
And they're allowed to lie, and
That's right.
There's no punishment.
Yeah. So when you get a candidate who gets $1 million worth of advertising, and I'll tell you this, that what happened with me here in West Virginia was kind of interesting. So I ended up running when I announced. I think I was like the first to announce, and then the guy who ended up winning, he announced like right around the same time I did. And then all of a sudden you had other people jump into it. And then towards the end, you had a guy jump in at the last minute with like $500,000. Nobody knows where that money came from. But interestingly enough, a week before the final, a week before the election, you had $800,000 come through a cryptocurrency company, LLC, to go towards advertising for my opponent, who ended up, winning. Now, I don't blame my opponent. Okay, let me just make that clear, because I recognize that anybody who's going to run, they are going to have to do that in order to win. There's no point in even running, because here's the thing. What I found out is without a doubt, I had the best volunteer organization. I had the best ground game, no doubt about it. I had hundreds of volunteers that were knocking on doors for me, but you just can't cover enough ground in a state like West Virginia, where basically the whole northern half of the state we had to cover. And it's a lot of rural areas, and even knocking on doors, you have to advertise. You have to do direct mailers. I talked to at least 3 consultants that all told me, if you don't do direct mailers, you're not going to win. And because you can't, there's just no way to get past the media, operation. That was the other thing. I couldn't get, like, some of the main radio programs would allow my opponent on, but they would not allow me on the show. And the reason why they're like, oh, well, we're not allowing him on because he's a candidate. We're allowing him on because he works for the government as the treasurer, and so, but they wouldn't let me on the program. And so this is the kind of games that get played.
It's a rich man's club. The town square has now become a privileged club. You know?
So when you think about that, without a doubt, these people are going to be beholden. They got to get reelected. So they're going to have to give some concessions, to these people who are, funding their campaigns. That's life. I'd love to believe that people would take money and then say, nah, you just gave me money doesn't mean I'm going to do what you want me to do. But I know how, the human beings are, we're creatures of nature, and we're going to help those who help us. And even if it goes against our moral code or whatever, that if you're willing to take money or willing to allow that kind of money to influence, elections, then yeah, you're gonna basically put in a few things for them. You're gonna allow them to get a few bills, flung their way, and help them out, and a few contracts, going their direction. And it is a dirty, disgusting, despicable game. And until we fix that,
Yep.
I don't know how we ever get our country back politically.
And it's hard to fix because people in Congress who are receiving the money aren't going to vote against it.
That's right.
And the population needs to unite to make a change, and they've got us hating one
How is
another.
it that they are allowed to vote for their own pay raises? I don't understand that.
No, that's a good gig.
Like that should be in order for them to get a pay raise, I think there should be like a couple of things, right? Number one, the budget should have to be balanced in order for them to get a pay raise. That seems pretty reasonable to me.
I would
And
support
I
that.
think it should be a referendum on the ballot, and the people should have to vote for that. Like if the people aren't willing to give them a pay raise, then I don't think they should. Now, maybe that would mean we'd have less people wanting to be in politics.
I wanted to ask you, did you get a chance to debate your opponent? Was that possible?
Not once.
No.
Actually, I take that back. No, well, okay, no, not once, because the one debate that they actually had a debate, where I think it would have been, well, that wasn't really a debate. They didn't show to one thing that I went to that was probably the closest to a debate that we could have had, where we were being asked questions by the people and we each got to give our answer. No, the one that we did do, it was like selected questions and very controlled, and we got to give up and give our little answer things in our way, and it was all kind of pre-selected, but it was all softball questions. And yeah, that's a shame, because I do think that there should be mandatory to see debates. We need to know,
Absolutely.
And in fact, by the way, I was going to say, as a teacher, you probably can appreciate this. I think that's part of the problem in America today with our youth, is that they're not, I think debate should be mandated teaching in schools, because nobody knows how to debate, and all they know how to do is get angry and pissed off and get hyperbolic and what's that term? Use ad hominem attacks and that sort of thing. You don't see actual intellectual debates happening, like what you were talking about that used to happen with your brother. It's funny. I've got a really good friend he's from Boston, and still lives there to this day. And he calls me up and we talk, and it's funny. Years ago, during Bush time and all that, he was a hardcore, a Democrat, and I was a hardcore Republican, and we used to have these debates that sometimes, it was like it almost would turn into a fist fight. So I learned never to be drinking while we're debating, right? And then like around election time, I had this like, hey man, let's not talk to each other until after this is over. And but we're still friends to this day. And the funny thing is now he's not a registered Republican now, but he is definitely, he said he's never going to vote Democrat again, because he's just seen it go so far left that it's like, it's off the, it's off the charts.
It is. And I don't think people realize how they're being moved in that direction, and what the ultimate strategy is, not only for division, but for social breakdown.
Yeah. That's brainwashing at this point.
It really is. But the thing is, again, they make people feel like there's a righteousness in what they're doing.
Yeah.
And I think both sides feel that, and that's what's really troubling. And I think the lack of religion is contributed to that, because I don't think people have a moral center, and so they're able to drift a bit. And I think that's been religion's been attacked repeatedly. I think even some of the rock and roll music that came out in the 60s that I love, but it has this message of, go out, get drunk, go out, have sex. You don't need to get married, be free, drop out, a lot of like revolt against your parents and norms of society that were actually really important in keeping a country unified and communities held together.
Well, that era of the boomers, they may have been rebellious as youths, but they kind of became more conservative as they got older, and I hope that we see something like that happen, with this, Gen Z and the millennials. I think they're maybe starting to shift a little bit, but I think it's like Gen Alpha is the one that comes after Z. They seem to be like way more conservative. Like they're saying the youngest generation right now, I guess, it's funny. We were talking about this before the show too, right? that, you grew up in a, Catholic home and you kind of rebelled as a youth, right? I grew up in a very secular home. And I guess my way of rebelling was I became a born again Christian, and, when my parents weren't. And, that was maybe my form of rebellion. So I think in a way, this Gen Alpha, they may be their form of rebellion may be to kind of swing us back to, to conservative, but what I fear is that they haven't been taught about American freedom, and they don't have any concept or understanding of a world free from surveillance. Their phones, everything they post online, like we grew up in a generation where, you could talk crap about somebody, you could say a dirty joke, you could say a racist joke, and that never ruined you. Like you could do something stupid and maybe a few people knew about it, but it was just hearsay, and you could get on with your life, grow up, become more responsible, more more mature. But now you got kids that are like ruining their lives. And the problem is they get out there, they say something online, and then next thing you know, now they got to double down because they can't admit that they were wrong. And so you've got this weird, psychological thing that goes on. And then plus the fact that they have never lived in a world without, without these.
Yeah.
So they don't know how to even communicate. All they know is the tit for tat back and forth on social media. They don't know how to sit down and actually have a intellectual, argument with somebody back and forth, and then have a beer afterwards and still be friends.
No, that's a huge point you're making. And, my last years in the high school, we would have girls fighting constantly. And the fights rarely ever began in school. It was all social media stuff. And the girls would come in. You see this girl's always dolled up every day, made out. Suddenly she's got her hair back, no earrings, sweatshirt, boots, and it's like, okay, come here. Who are you fighting today? And it's like, this girl put my ass on the, Snapchat, and I'm not standing for that. And my mom said I could take her down. And it's
it's been a problem. Like you got, I remember when my kids first told me about Snapchat, and kids are like sending pictures of their, their naked bodies and stuff to each other. And it's like, are you kidding me? And it became a real problem for law enforcement because like, how do we enforce child pornography laws when it's a child sending their naked picture to somebody, and it's like, we are facing something that I don't think anybody was prepared for. It's interesting that I think it was both Bill Gates and Steve Jobs would never let their kids have, a smartphone.
Absolutely.
And that's because the elites, I do think that they see it as a way of breaking down society, but they're not going to allow that to happen to their own family.
No, good point.
So, maybe that's the answer is, look, we don't allow, people who are minors to drink. Driving, is a privilege. You don't get to do that at least until you're 16, and you don't get your full license until you're 18. We have limitations, and maybe they need to put some limitations on social media and smartphones and things like that, because I do think that it is destroying our society.
When I started teaching, I would always go to the prom, teaching high school, and you always saw kids paired up. everyone, who are you taking the prom? Who are you taking the prom? By 30 years down the road, nobody took anybody to the prom.
No.
Girls would go in the limo, boys would go in their limo, and it was hookups. People
Yeah.
might hook up, and it was about just party, get drunk, maybe hook up with someone, and felt very
Yeah.
passionate and unloving and cold and
Yeah.
heartless. And that's the world they're kind of in. It's not their fault. This is kind of
Yeah.
what they're being told is cool.
That's an interesting point. You know, it's ironic. Growing up, my like I said, I grew up in a secular home. My father and my stepmom, they demanded like one of the rule, and this is like a weird rule. I was not allowed to go steady with a girl. I could date as many girls as I wanted. In fact, I could date 100 girls, no problem. But I was not allowed to go steady. I understand now why they did that, because back then, you know, if you know, girls didn't, there was no hookup culture. Shoot, I grew up during AIDS, you know. We were all afraid of that. So, you know, we had the DARE program. So, you know, no drugs. We had AIDS, so no sex. So, but where the danger was when you had two people who were going steady and, you know, for a long time, and they were in love with each other and all of that. That's where kids got pregnant out of wedlock and, you know, were having sex. You never had sex going on between people who just, you know, went on a casual date. That just, it was not something that happened on a regular.
Right.
My kids' generation, you're right. It's exact opposite. And I laugh now because I remember talking to my parents. I'm like, you know, look, you know, I was a virgin when I got married. And I'm like, was that, did you guys orchestrate that by, you know, and yeah, they did. They knew.
They knew
as long as I dated girls and I didn't get, you know, hooked on one of them, that I would make it through my teen years without getting some girl pregnant.
That was the key. I mean, I wasn't allowed to date till I was 16, and I cheated a little bit on the side. But and then when I was 16, actually, my mother especially put up a big argument saying, "You're going to get serious with someone. You're going to put your schoolwork aside, and it's going to be bad for you." I had to play a sport. I had to have a job. I had to be on the honor roll. Our system was set up. You know, I had to go to church. There was no room for play. You know?
My parents made sure that I was either in sports or in marching band, so I never had time for anything extracurricular. I mean, I was busy, and you're right. It was a different world. You know, there was you know, that was the other thing too, is that all of that dating did make me you know, it helped me with being able to, you know, talk with people and be able to communicate. My kids have really struggled with that because all of their communications, you know, started online.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's frightening. I see some of the boys that I see in my mental health work, you know, they have porn and video games and they vape and they feel like they don't need anything else. And they play video games with their friends. They watch porn. They're in their room all the time.
Yeah.
And the depression rates have gone up. Suicide rates have gone up. Social alienation. It's really tragic.
Yeah. It's almost like, did you ever see, oh gosh, what was the name of that movie? Bruce Willis.
Okay.
And they're basically in these, like, they're in these pods and they have these fake bodies that are like perfect. And, you know, and they basically can, you know, their fake bodies, you know, interact with people. And eventually, you know, like this rebel group or whatever, you know, sends some sort of virus into the system that like basically shuts down, you know, everybody's, you know, pod or whatever. And so and everybody like wakes up and they step out of their pods and they walk out in the street and they're all like, you know, they're all like disheveled and everything because, you know, they've been living in this fake reality and now they're back into reality. I almost feel like, you know, as terrible as it would be, and I certainly don't wish this on us, you know, for any kind of EMP or anything, but it is like if we almost need something drastic, you know, and maybe it's just Congress having the balls, you know, to say, you know what, we're not going to allow youth anymore to become addicted, because there's tons and tons of research on this that the, you know, social media is, you know, that's like all of the, you know, how they have the thumbs up. They did a study on this with Facebook, the likes, you know, there's a reason there's no, you know, there's a reason why it's all likes and claps and all of that. because they've learned, the marketers have learned that people don't like when they get a thumbs down, or when somebody, thumbs down something that they say or whatever, and they're less likely to go back. But when they get a thumbs up from somebody, or they get a like or a smiley face or something like that, or a heart, they get a dopamine hit.
Mm-hmm.
And literally these kids are getting addicted to dopamine. These dopamine hits, like, early on. It's just as addictive as like crack cocaine.
Yeah. 5-year-olds.
Same thing with porn. Same
Yep.
thing with video games and a lot of this other stuff. My parents, I had video games, but my parents, they said, you know what? 1 hour, and then you have to go outside, and you got to go be out in the yard. And I don't want to see you again until the sun comes down.
That's it. That's it. My folks the same. If you're staying in, you're doing homework. Otherwise, you're out. That's it. Come back at 6 for dinner.
Yeah.
And we would wander in the woods. We'd play sports, and everybody in the neighborhood would be out. And it was like 2 hours of just letting us be kids, and then you go back, you do your work, you go to bed, you go to school the next day. And, in the days you didn't work after school, those were the treats. And kids are so spread apart today. They may live near each other, but they're not connecting physically.
Well, now that we get like so much media, and not just like, in some ways, like social media, getting your news from social media in some ways has opened the door for, freedom, right? Freedom of expression, freedom of the press. But also, it's also opened the door for a lot of disinformation, a lot of propaganda, because we don't know where this stuff's coming from. Like I said, we're finding that some of the stuff is actually bots. Some of it is, coming from our enemies, trying to divide us, that sort of thing.
Absolutely.
But we are learning. I hope that we're learning that there's a lot that we've been lied about. And so I want to shift back our conversation back real quick to the government. Or history. As a history teacher, what is the biggest lie or myth that the American public still believes?
Ooh, that's such a great question. I would say that the government, or the people we see on television and the government, the movies, are all there for our benefit, and they're there to serve us. And it makes it hard for people then, I think, to think, what, our government had something to do with 9/11? Well, our government had something to do with the assassinations in the 60s, the political assassinations. I think COVID was almost like we saw their hand for a second.
My gosh, yeah.
We saw how, yes, the
emerald curtain, right?
You will get injected or you will be punished.
Yeah.
And that was an overreach that I hadn't seen before. It's shocked me. I knew in February, before the March pandemic was declared, because I had seen Event 201.
That's what I was talking about with this, them doing this exercise. Yeah, Event 201, that was it.
They were planning it. It was a planning session for it all, and it eerily similar to what we experienced. And when I saw that in February, I said, okay, geez, they're at it again. JFK, 9/11, now this, the financial crisis. And I think that for a lot of Democrats, they think Obama was the best thing that happened to us. And if you go through the things that Obama has done, or did, or signed off on,
some of that stuff's coming out now. Coming out now with Tulsi Gabbard's release of information, which is, it's not shocking to me, because it's like, I've known this, but at least she's declassifying the documents that, in fact, it's funny, one of the things that she declassified was an internal assessment that the Russians had not interfered with the 2016 election. And the funny thing about it is that was one of the documents I brought out of the FBI, was this internal assessment, because I was trying to say, hey, the media's lying, and so is Jim Comey, and they're all lying when they say that the Russians were we're trying to infiltrate the 2016 elections. So interesting that that's finally been declassified.
Sure.
But I was looking at the comments here, and in the comments, somebody commented in response to the biggest lie. We got one person saying Roswell, Colonel Philip Corsi wrote a book on it, and then One-Leg Patriot said that we are free. That's an interesting one, because when I went around talking to people as I ran for office, my campaign manager at the very beginning, I had a different campaign manager, and he set up a meeting with like a businessman who owned a restaurant in town. So first person I meet with, and I sit down, and he was a little bit late getting to his restaurant because he was out of town. Shows up and he sits down. And he goes, introduce myself, and he goes, I was thinking the whole way here about what I wanted to say to you. And he says, so I'm just going to ask you one question. And he goes, do you believe we're free? And I thought about it. I was like, no, we're not. And he went down a litany of things that just to run his business that he's required to do. Like he wanted to put in like a deck, on the back of it, not even in the front where the people walk on. And he had to pay all these fees and get all these approvals, and and then things got delayed, and he had to he felt like he would have to bribe people just to get a deck put in on his own property. And that's where we're living in.
Look at California under Gavin Newsom.
Yeah.
Restaurants were told you have to shut down. Oh, okay, you can open outdoor dining. So everyone starts paying all this money. They're having business coming in to build outdoor dining. And then he says, you know what? We can't do outdoor dining.
Yeah, and then there's video footage of him eating without a mask on in a restaurant.
With 22 people who are all his contributors, or at the French Laundry, the most elite restaurant.
That's right. Nancy Pelosi, same thing. I'm going to get my hair done, so we're going to shut everything down. But you're going to open up your salon so I can get my hair done. I'm not wearing a mask.
No, it's
these people disgust me.
Yep, and they don't care. They think of us as useless eaters.
Yeah.
We're back to that. And I think that's the greatest realization. Not only, I thought when COVID started, these pharmaceutical companies are trying to get rich. And then I realized, oh, no. With the mandates, there's something even darker going on.
Without a doubt. And in fact, one of the things that got me was I remember reading an article that was talking about how Bill Gates and George Soros had teamed up to buy the company that produces the PCR test. That same test that was used countless times. So I was curious. I was like, how much money did they make on that? And so I looked, there was like the amount of money that was spent on testing exceeded the amount of money spent on vaccines, like exponentially, because they made it a requirement policy-wise to test everywhere. And they made a ton of money on that.
Oh God, yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's crazy that these guys are not in prison.
No question.
That they're not being investigated. I just don't understand it. To me, that's why, I have no faith right now, even with Donald Trump and with Kash Patel and with Dan Bongino and with Pam Bondi, with all his people in play. Until I start seeing arrests, I'm not going to believe anything's changed. I mean, yes, some things have changed. They're at least now going after hardened criminals instead of going after people who exercise their First Amendment, right to assemble and make their grievances known to their government.
Absolutely.
At least now they're going after drug dealers and pedophiles and cartel members. But there's who they're not arresting?
Who?
They have not made one political arrest. They have of anybody that is politically connected. They haven't made any arrests of anybody who works for the FBI or who worked for the FBI or who worked for the intelligence community. Like all this stuff that's come out, I'm not going to believe that anything has changed until I see some of those guys, until I see some COVID guys get arrested. And I hate to say this, I love what Trump has done in many ways, but the one thing he has not done, to me, in my own personal belief, I don't see him having taken any responsibility whatsoever for the creation of the monstrosity of these vaccines that have killed millions.
I'll tell you, I voted for him in 2020, but not in 2024 because of that. I didn't vote. I was and in New York, we don't vote, right? The Democrats win by 20%. Yeah, it's just ridiculous. But the last Democrat I voted for was Obama, and he said, you know what, I'm going to end these foreign wars. I'm going to arrest those banksters who ripped us off and foreclosed so many people, homeowners, and I'm going to raise the minimum wage. and stop Guantanamo torture. He did none of it. None of it. And Trump's championing the vaccine even to this day.
I know. They just passed and Congress just passed another bill to extend and now like do the what is it? These mRNA vaccines that basically self-replicate.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? Like, did we learn nothing? That if the Democrats, sure, maybe the Republicans will respect the Constitution and not force it on somebody, but I guarantee you, another Democrat gets in there, they're not going to have any respect for the Constitution, and they will abuse the people with it. And if they keep screwing around, and I'm being very, I'm trying my best not to use other swear words. That's how angry I am about this. But if they keep screwing around with this, they are going to unleash Armageddon on us. Like AI. Like I am all for AI, but not for the way that it is being developed without any safeguards at all. Like when they cloned Dolly the sheep, okay, you had a massive group of academics and ethicists and people who came together. They formed an organization, the Bioethics Association of America, or whatever it was, and internationally. And they got different people together from other nations, and they all came to an agreement that we can never clone human beings, never.
Right.
And they came to a set of agreements. You know what they've not done that with? AI. They haven't even had a single thought about the ethics of this. What happens if they set this loose on us? And what happens if the control oligarchs? I love Seamus Bruner wrote a book called Control Oligarchs. Highly, highly recommend it. I'd love to have him on my show. If he hears this, please reach out to me, because his book is phenomenal. And he talks about these elites. The book's called Control Oligarchs, but in it, he talks about their plans. I mean, these guys talk about it. They don't hide anything. They are absolutely planning to replace, a lot of us.
And what the AI can do also is rewrite history.
Oh, without it, it's already happening.
It is. And, for example, what's the latest? Anything with the vaccine, when Fauci said natural immunity for COVID only lasts 3 months. So yeah, there's natural immunity, but it doesn't last. Now, the Greeks and Romans knew it lasted a lifetime. Immunity to infection if you had chickenpox or some virus, but suddenly, to serve the purpose of more vaccines and the boosters, he says it. So I told my brothers, you guys know basic biology. This is an obvious lie. No, it's not, because look, factcheck.org says, the first 10 sites come up and say, oh no, natural immunity for COVID is only 3 months. It's clear. And you're like, what? And it's Orwellian to me, 2 + 2 is 5, not 4.
Yeah.
And until they can get you to say that, and I feel like that's what they're doing.
That's what I believe. That's what this whole thing about, men can be women and women can be men thing. I really believe like that. I think that is like a psyop designed to try to get us to accept something that is not reality.
Absolutely.
Look. When it came down to like, it's because this has nothing to do with like LGBTQ. It doesn't.
No,
we're not talking about sex here. We're not talking about people wanting to, sleep with whoever they want or wanting to have relationships with whoever. No, we're talking about people wanting to deny physical reality.
Right.
And now you got, people saying, oh, if they believe they're a cat, then let them have a kitty litter box so they can poop in it. I mean, it's like, have you lost your mind?
I know. And kids think, well, today I'm going to be a female. Like, no, that's not the case, but they've been propagandized so badly.
Yeah,
and you know what? It serves depopulation.
You don't allow a kid to get a tattoo, but we'll allow them to get put on drugs that totally screw with their entire, development. It's crazy.
It's absolutely insane. And the insurance will pay for it like that, right?
Yeah.
My mother needed a pacemaker. She found her twice on the floor. She was in her 90s, eyes twitching, passed out, and was like, okay, because her heart rhythm was off. The insurance company, only after the third incident, they finally okayed a pacemaker for insurance-wise. And yet you can get these gender operation surgeries free. And of course, Governor Prisker's family's got big money in the surgeries and in these hormone blockers. So, They're making money off of it as well. They're depopulating us because a lot of them are sexually dysfunctional after these.
Oh yeah, as many of these kids, they basically are sterile afterwards. They can't have kids afterwards. It's crazy. It is nuts. So it seems to me you don't have to be a conspiracy theorist to see what's going on and realize that there is an agenda by the elites to destroy the family, to destroy the population, to seriously curtail. Like, they don't even want. Look, if we had a population that was like growing out of control, that would be one thing. But we don't even have enough people to even replace the people that are dying.
Yeah.
And nobody does.
No.
I mean, maybe the only ones are maybe African countries, I think, are like, maybe the only places where they have that, happening. But it is, but the problem is, and I'm sure you'll appreciate this, if you think about it, right? So they're saying we're not going to replace the population, yet we have this massive welfare state. And the way that welfare is paid, the way that we keep this welfare state going is the young generation has to work to pay taxes so that the old generation, has Social Security and all of that, right? And medical and Medicaid, Medicare. Well, because they're not replacing the population, and the problem, somebody might say, well, maybe we should open our borders and let migrants in. No, because the problem is they're coming here when they're like in their 50s. They've never paid into the system ever, and now they're expecting a handout. And so literally we are destroying our social safety net. At the same time, we're not replacing the people who are supposed. So this is why like libertarians, for example, don't believe in having these welfare states, and I agree,
right?
But we have one, so we can't continue to have one, though. At the rate we're going, it's going to become completely gone, and so maybe that's why one of the things that I suspect, maybe that's why they wanted to kill off a bunch of people with COVID. I mean, look at the majority of the people that died were people who were older.
No question. But we're finding now cancer's just skyrocketing.
In young
turbo
people.
Cancers in young people, and cancers that oncologists have never seen move that rapidly before. And so, is that connected to the shot? Well, the rise started 2021. Could be.
Yeah,
it's terrifying.
Well, it sounds like you and me will still be around. I surely didn't take that shot.
Well, they rated you, so they
did.
They don't like you too much.
No, they don't. They don't. It's funny. I always, when I kind of set up my studio here, and in this view, you can't really see. I'm going to switch over real quick here, though, just so, in the background here, my Second Amendment view here. My wife's like, you don't want to be showing them that. I'm like, no, I want them to see it. I want them to know that I love this country and that I love our Constitution and our Second Amendment. And if the tyrants ever win and ever take over this country, it's funny. We always joke here in West Virginia. Like, West Virginia's got to be the most pro Second Amendment state, in the union. I mean, like, I know Texas people love their guns. I know people in Tennessee love their guns, but West Virginia is like nothing I've ever seen. When I decided to run, I met with this lady who was probably 80 years old, and she's like, "Oh, can you tell me how you feel about the Second Amendment?" And I go, "Oh, I'm a big believer. I've got a lot of guns. I was in the military. I love shooting. It's probably one of my favorite pastimes." And she goes, "Oh, good. What kind of piece do you have? And what do you carry?" And then she pulls out a revolver and shows me what she's carried. And she's like 80 years old, and she got it in her little handbag. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I love the state.
Yeah,
but
don't
that
is in the Mountaineer symbol. Have a rifle.
We've got to exercise our rights. It does. Because you got the Mountaineers, kind of a hunter and
right.
That's
great.
Now I love Virginia. It's funny because Virginia is not as pro Second Amendment as we are, but they've got a great motto for their state, which is basically death to tyrants. So,
I know.
ours is Mountaineers Live Free. And
I love it.
and I always jokingly say that if our nation was ever overrun by another country, they would basically get to the border of West Virginia and go, let's go around there.
Yeah.
Because it would be Afghanistan coming through here. Not only is it mountainous terrain everywhere, but everybody, owns a gun or several.
And that's the beauty of the Constitution, and people don't realize just how special that document is. Nothing ever like it has happened beforehand, and the freedoms it did, the respect for individual rights.
That's the only thing that gives me hope still, for our country.
And the European countries are looking to us and that Constitution say, please stop this madness and help us get out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I do believe that enough time can pass and we can see some change. I used to think that the courts were kind of like our final stopgap, and I lost some faith in the courts with some of their decisions. Although it's funny, on the Second Amendment one, they have been very, very pro Second Amendment, and I think the left made a huge mistake at sending a bunch of people to go and protest in front of their homes.
Yes.
Like, okay, they were like thinking of themselves, maybe we do want guns. That one guy shows up at Kavanaugh's house armed, ready to kill him.
Yeah. It's I don't know, Nate. I think you're a real example for folks. You stood up for truth so many times at expense to yourself, and you still keep fighting, and you're not ashamed of yourself because you're doing the right thing and you believe in the goodness of others, and real honor that you had me on.
I appreciate that. And the only thing I wish I could say that sometimes I do wonder, and I go, man, it seems like all of this blowing the whistle and all of this like fighting against the election theft of 2020, and then it's like so many things that I've been involved with and worked on, and it seems like it's come to nothing except for trouble in my life. And I'll be honest with you, I oftentimes wonder, is it worth it? And the only thing that keeps me, I guess, on the straight and narrow is the knowledge that someday I'm going to stand before God. And I do truly fear God. I do, that scripture that says the beginning of all wisdom is the fear of the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
And I know someday I'm going to stand before him, and he's going to ask me, about the things, not only the things that I did that I shouldn't have done, but also about the things that I should have done that I chose not to, because I wussed out, and so I want to stand before him someday and hear him say, good job, my good and faithful servant. You did what I asked you to do. And I know this life is temporary. I know that nothing on this planet is going to last forever.
Yeah.
And so I have to constantly remind myself of that. And it's hard, it's a challenge. I'm a human being and I have limitations, and I do get discouraged and depressed, and it's hard not to sometimes.
But my mother told me the golden rule every day I left the house. She said, "Do unto others as you want others to do unto you."
Absolutely.
And that's what you're doing. You see something that we need to be aware of because you've had some insights that we haven't had, and at great risk to yourself, you said, "No, I would want someone to tell me this, so I'm going to tell others."
There's an interesting thing I remember in college. I took a course on cyber ethics, and I'll never forget this. I had heard always, because as growing up and I became a Christian at 16 and read a lot of the Bible, and I remember, learning about the golden rule. And even before I was a Christian, I remember hearing it, but I never heard about the golden mean. And they're similar, but they're not the same. The golden mean is don't do unto others what you don't want done unto you. And that's a good thing. That's a good basis of ethics. And I think that was Aristotle or Plato or one of those guys that said that. Or maybe even Socrates, I'm not sure. But Jesus came, and what he said took it one step further. He said, "Do unto others as you would have done unto you," meaning take proactive steps and do the right thing. Don't just ignore evil when you see it. don't pretend, that you can allow evil to go on without, confronting it, and that's righteous. That's not righteous. And in fact, in James, we had T-shirts made for my campaign, and on the back of our T-shirts, I think it's James 1:14, where it says, or maybe is it 1:14? I can't remember, but it says that he that knows the good that he ought to do and chooses not to, that is sin for him. And that has become a motto, for me. And I try my best to live by it. I can't, it's not, I'm not a perfect person. I've made a lot of mistakes in my life. And there have been a couple of times in my life where I had an opportunity to do the right thing and I didn't, like, especially earlier in life. And I regretted it always. And I don't ever want to do that again. And so I've worked hard to try to remember that. And I hope that people listening to this show and others will be encouraged and remember that, because we will be held accountable. And those of us that I believe, that in my faith, I believe that those of us that have found Christ, we will be forgiven of our sins. We will find salvation, not because of our good works or our good deeds or anything. But there's a funny saying that a friend of mine and I were having this conversation, that there's a scripture that talks about that when we that our good deeds will be like crowns, right? And some of us will have really, really fancy crowns, that of all of this good deeds that we did. They have nothing to do with salvation, but it's interesting. In a later scripture, it talks about how when we stand before Christ, we will cast down our crowns at his feet. And I wonder if there's going to be some people that have these beautiful crowns that they can lay at the feet of Christ, and others will have these little Burger King, cardboard crowns. And that I don't want to be the guy with the little cardboard, crown. So I look at it like this, that, the things that we do that are righteous in this world, that we do them for God. We do them so that we can present that, as even as menial as it is, as our gift to him for what he did for us. And it's a challenge, but we've been talking for about an hour and 20 minutes, and I think this has been a great conversation. I hope to have you on again, and I would love to talk with you again. I think these are great conversations, and
yeah, it's a pleasure, Nate. Really is, and an honor to contribute to what you're doing. You're opening eyes. You're talking about the truth, and you have faith, and that's so important. I know you look in the mirror and say, I'm not perfect, but I'm a good man. And that's
I know that at a minimum, I want my children, I want my wife, I want my my loved ones to see that in me. I don't know if the world will, because oftentimes it's like, that's like always been my pet peeve, is when you get like falsely accused of things, and like that is like the worst. And that's happened to me, and I've had to deal with that. You get slandered. Trump hates it, obviously. He attacks the media all the time. But I do know that if we can have an impression, if we can do some good in this world, and leave it a little bit better than the way we found it, then at least we've lived our lives in a way that we can stand before God someday and hold our head up.
Amen.
And that's the best that we can hope for. Well,
absolutely.
Dennison, I always close my show in prayer, and I'm going to do that now. I recognize what our founders understood, which is that, we need the providence of God. We cannot do this. We can't fight this fight and win without it.
No, it's the light that guides.
Yep.
It's the same light that's in all of us. And for some people, it's been covered up, unfortunately. Yeah. But that light is our salvation.
Absolutely. Well, Heavenly Father, I thank you for Dennison. I thank you for what he has been doing, and for the years that he worked in the schools and served the people in his community. And God, I just pray that you would help him to continue through his radio program and through the different things that he does and the outlets that he works through, that you would help him to be a light in a dark world, or you help him to be a bright and shining light on a city on a hill, Lord. God, help us all to speak up when we need to speak up, and to not turn a blind eye to the evils of this world. Help us to have the courage and the faith and the trust in you that you'll get us through it. And Lord, I thank you for even the little bit of respite that we've had with the Trump administration, and not seeing, some of the horrendous things that were going on the 4 years before. But God, we do pray that you would please put righteous advisors around him. And if there's a corrupt people, if there are people who go against the Constitution, that you would remove those people,
please,
and that you would please give him advisors that will tell him what he doesn't necessarily want to hear all the time, but will tell him the truth. And I pray, God, for transparency in our government. I pray for America truly to meet that vision that Trump has of being, great again. And I pray that we will be the shining city on the hill for the rest of the world in truth, in what is freedom. And Lord, we need that freedom restored in our country, Lord. I pray that you would help our leaders to find their way back. And for those that are corrupt, remove them and replace them, God. And for those that are righteous and that are brave and willing to uphold the truth, I pray that you would elevate them and help them to have more authority and more influence in Congress and in our courts, Lord. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Nate.
So, Dennison, where can people follow you? Where can they catch your show?
Oh, my show is it's Monday mornings from 9 to 10 Eastern Standard Time on WIOX radio. So you just go to wioxradio.org. Once you're there's a big red button to listen, so you can listen live. I haven't set up a podcast yet. I've just retired from multiple jobs, so I hope to get to that soon and start really exploring the world that you are thriving in. So you're a role model in that sense. I love what you're doing, and keep doing it, please, Nate. Yeah.
And so are you on X? Are you on social media?
I'm very limited on social media, but I get on X and read, but I don't post or anything like that. I should, but I've tried to, keep a semi-low profile while I'm still in the work world. And
I hear you.
People don't like sometimes hearing different points of view.
Man, I didn't have a choice. When the FBI raided my home, I became an international person overnight. So that kind of threw me into the public. What was that comedian that says he was drunk in the bar? Oh gosh, what's his name? He's on the Blue Collar Comedy Tour. And he talks about that when he got arrested for being drunk in public, and he goes, "Hey, wait a minute! I was drunk in the bar. They threw me into the public."
I love that.
That's kind of how I feel about the media, right? I had for 20-something years with a top secret clearance. I had like very low profile, hardly any social media, never posted anything. And in a matter of like overnight, I went from 2 followers on Twitter, my mom and my wife, I think, to 60,000, and then like 100 and something thousand, and because of the news stories that broke. So it is there's pros and cons to it, right? The pros are you can reach a lot of people. The cons are a lot of people, you have no more privacy anymore. Your life is now being seen and recorded forever, right? Like what we talked about with these kids.
Yes.
Thankfully, I'm at an age where I don't say the things that I used to say, at least out loud.
I know. God, to be 12 years old today and have a social media world, the whole world can see what you think and say, and you're so insecure and you're trying out new thoughts and you get hammered for it.
Maybe that's part of it. Maybe we need to start, a cultural shift where, it's interesting in Japan. I lived in Japan for 3.5 years with my family, and they have their culture is different. They're very much a drinking culture, and you do something, you get drunk here in America, and you do something stupid or say something that you shouldn't have said, and you're never gonna live it down. People are gonna probably record it and then post it online. In Japan, if you get drunk and act stupid, they say, "Oh, he's drunk," and they're very forgiving. They say, "What happens when you're drunk, stays there when you're drunk." And maybe we need to kind of have a similar attitude with youth and what they post online when they're young, and just say, you know what? Culturally, we accept that they're young and immature. And so when they get older, we're not going to hold them accountable for what they said when they were a minor, you know?
Right.
And maybe that's what we need to do is start shifting ourselves in that area.
It used to be a teaching moment when a young person made a mistake, was an opportunity to help them learn. And now it's just a shame show. You know, it's awful. Yeah. It's awful.
But it takes a cultural change. You know, it takes it takes us learning to have a little grace, a little more tolerance, and some forgiveness, you know, for what people do when they're stupid and young, because we all are stupid and young.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
And some of us
do stupid things. No, ask my wife.
Right. Yeah. Right. Same.
Yeah.
Well, Dennison, has been an absolute pleasure to have you on. And I want to thank everybody in the chat, and just you guys are always awesome. And I want to thank you for a lot of your comments and your interactions. I really do. The only reason that I do this show is because I really do love, you know, being able to communicate with great people like you, Dennison, and knowing that, you know, that there's so many people out there that get impacted in a positive way. And I hope that we can do that and continue to do that. So I want to thank everyone on the show. We had about looks like about 1,600 people tonight.
Great.
And watching the show. And so, you know, God bless you all, and God bless America. And please remember what we talked about. It's not just about not doing evil, but it's also about when we see the good that we can do, we should do it. You know, we should not turn a blind eye to evil. And we certainly, you know, in our country, that it's on us. And we have to pass this nation and this Constitution to the next generation. And I certainly don't want to see this country and see it go down the tubes and see it lost under my watch. So,
yeah, thank you, Nate. You're a badass, but you're a very kind man. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. God bless you.
All right. End this thing.
Have a good night.
Thanks so much, Nate.
Raise some Cain. You gotta raise some Cain. In the heartland where the faith runs strong, we've seen the shadows growing long. Watch those around us be deceived. Yeah, the fight is at our doors, no matter who we believe. Corruption, lawless day and night, we'll speak the truth into the light. We'll bring the battle, heed the call, watch the whole thing fall. We gotta raise some Cain, show the lies, break some chains and make things right. Feel the power, be the change, time is now. We gotta raise some Cain.